Welcome back to the Mindfully Gay podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Jerry. Today, we're tackling a question that's as personal as it is political. What is a good gay?
This topic came straight from a retreat we hosted with queer men of many generations, and the conversations got real, fast.
Join us as we reflect on the expectations placed on gay men, the myths we carry, and the ways we can show up more authentically for ourselves and each other. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are at.
Or evening.
And
we have to do the signature.
Hi! Welcome to the Mindfully Gay podcast. We've been doing this for over a year.
Yes.
We've changed locations today just to kind of fluff things up a bit.
Yeah, we're actually in our original studio.
Which is our guest bedroom. We won't tell you what we film. We've gotten a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
In fact, we've just spent the last half hour processing feedback.
Mm-hmm.
People just listen to our friendship podcast.
Right.
And what we're hearing is people want to hear more about queer, gay, non-sexual relationship dynamics.
Right.
So we're not talking about that today.
So stay tuned for that one. There's going to be a part 2.
But we're very energized
Yeah.
that people are giving us some feedback because we just sat here and thought, wow, who are some guests we could have that could help participate in this dialogue,
Right.
in this discussion. And again, that's all we're having is discussion. And we're glad that you're listening in. And we welcome your feedback. We welcome your comments on our Facebook page, on our Instagram page, mindfully_gay. You can go to the podcast platforms and there should be a link to text message us if you have comments, which some of you have done. So yeah, we're energized this morning.
We are energized. And another comment, so something that we've said in episodes in the past, we haven't said it much lately, is, just to kind of a precursor to how we do these discussions and have these discussions. We are just having conversation. We don't really see ourselves as, professional or experts in any particular area of these types of conversations. We're really just speaking from experience and just having these conversations. And some feedback that we've gotten is, wow, it feels like I'm just in a room with you, listening to your conversation, or I just got off the phone with you or something. So we welcome that feedback, and I think that's what we really want to present here. We're just as topics come to mind, or you send us ideas, we just want to talk about them. Because I find personally that once we start talking about something, I find out what I really feel about some things, or I certainly have some revelations and light bulbs start going off, and wow.
Yeah.
Some really inspiring conversations have come out of this.
Well, and I think, frankly, a lot of our topics, like the topic we're going to talk about today, but I think a lot of our topics, you and I sit down and say, well, how was your week? What, because John intersects with a lot of gay men. I intersect with a lot of gay men with what I do professionally. And sometimes there are themes.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we sometimes find that theme between our experiences, and that's what we end up talking about.
Right.
And so what that tells us is, because of who we are, our age, our race, our cultural experiences, whatever, how we see our topics are kind of privileged around those things. And so what's helpful is to hear your perspective and helping us think, oh yeah, I never thought about it this way.
Right.
What if we did a podcast discussion about it and see what comes from it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly it. So what is our topic today?
Well, here's the backstory.
Okay.
So last weekend, we had a group of 9 guys here. We had 3 people from Canada, 1 person from Colorado. The rest were from Utah. One was from New York, moving and had just recently moved here. So it was a very nice eclectic mix of location.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. The Canadians had a lot of anxiety about crossing the border.
Oh, I bet.
Considering the political landscape, it was interesting.
Wow.
Their fear and anxieties about going through customs and coming here.
Very interesting.
And in this group, I was probably the oldest, myself and Bruce, my partner. And then we had someone here who was like in their mid-20s. So we had a pretty broad continuum. I would say average age was between 37 and 42. We had a kind of like your handsome muscle guy. We had a little Twinkie guy. We had gay hippie guy, hippie/fairy. You know who you are. And then just kind of standard gay. But what was interesting when I start looking at the dynamics is how we were kind of all in these interesting cliches.
Yeah.
Right. And as we would have conversations and discussion, and as we were processing, and it was a very deep retreat. Like there was some really profound work. I'm going to use the word work in this case because it was.
Yeah.
And it was quite beautiful when we got to the end. It was like, wow, look at what we did.
Wow.
And you can go on the Instagram page. I think I posted a picture of the group. And in our conversations, there was a theme. And that theme was the question of, am I doing this right? Am I being the right kind of gay?
Oh, wow.
And the way that was looked at was, there's kind of this societal idea of what it means to be gay, right? We have stereotypes. We have these concepts that are supported through media, Hollywood, film, the arts. But there tends to be a very cliche container kind of concept about what we expect from you as a gay person. As a gay man, here's how we see you. And if you don't look that way, we don't see you as gay.
Or act this way, we don't see you as gay.
Right. And then what was also interesting about the conversation was the acknowledgement of how we do that to ourselves within the community. Right. There's an expectation amongst us as gay men that we will talk and behave and engage each other in a certain way. And the consciousness of the group was how much time we spend kind of chasing the ideals that are projected out there for us, as opposed to finding our more authentic expression and connection with what resonates with us. And that I think sometimes in that process or that dialogue, we spend a lot of time projecting judgment about how I think you see me or don't see me. A good example of this, Nick and I were talking the other day, and Nick said that he got rid of Grindr and Scruff.
Wow.
And he did that a while ago. He talked about it on the podcast, but he still has stayed off it. And he said the noticeable thing that he experienced is he didn't feel like he was projecting onto other gay men that he would see out in the community. So if you didn't answer my text on Scruff, but I saw you at the gym, I walked by you and right, because now you're not going to give me the time of day, I'm not going to give you the time of day. He said now when he sees someone, he makes a connection. He makes talks to someone or engages them, and he doesn't have any kind of prior conviction about how he sees them.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense.
But I remember texting you and saying, wow, John, this was a really interesting dynamic. And it felt like it would be interesting to unpack this on the podcast.
Right. And when you mentioned it to me through that text, gosh, so many ideas kind of went through my head in regards to, what, to answer that question, or even just to ask that question, what is a good gay? How do I be a good gay? And it's like, wow, because it's so complicated, because the forefront things that come to my mind are how maybe non-gay or just kind of society sees gay people from whatever lens that may be, through stereotypes or what they see on TV or media, things like that. So they have a preconceived notion of what gay is, as far as gay men, let's say. And as that gets kind of projected out into the community, the queer community either embraces that in some capacity, maybe unconsciously, and starts to behave in those stereotypical ways, or rejects it.
And I would say part of that rejection is I then isolate, insulate, protect myself. So that when we try to book a retreat and we hear people saying, I'm afraid to show up. I don't know how to sit with or be with.
It just
or how I will be perceived.
How I will be perceived, because I think of all those perceptions, all those conjurings, really, and it ends up for some folks like that, isolating. All these obstacles and barriers get in their way in order for them to be themselves, or just to be the gay person that they want to be, or saying that they want to connect and be in community, but then can't show up to this party.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, there's so much to unpack here.
Well, if you think about in so many ways, I think I've talked about Harry Hayes' concept of object.
Yes.
Really.
Yes.
Harry Hayes was a founder of the Radical Fairies, and he promoted this idea that gay men are conditioned to see each other as objects. And his encouragement, and definitely through his sex magic workshops, was about how do we move beyond the objectification of each other and start seeing each other in this subject-subject dynamic.
Right.
Where it's kind of like I was telling my friend the other day, I see you as like this beautiful man, a sexy man, a desirable man. But that's not where my critique of you ends.
Correct.
And whether we want to be sexual or intimate is a totally different discussion. But I can see you and appreciate and witness you as an individual on so many different levels.
Right.
And I think about sometimes, we've seen some catty comments about what we're wearing or what our hair looks like. And I think when I see those kind of comments, I think that's kind of a sad place for that person to be in. Right.
And that when you talked about that Harry Hayes statement, object, that was an eye-opener for me, because it kind of clarifies the scene a little bit for me. And that's a really good example, is that we just objectify. I see you, and I instantly kind of go to a like a spreadsheet of check, like muscular, masculine, bearded, straight acting. I mean, all these little bullet points that make this person, air quote, gay or good gay, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't fit that, then we can slip into that judgment. Oh, well, they're not attractive. Oh, well, they're not muscular. Oh, well, they're not this or not that. And so, just that whole objectification, we don't see them as a person. And so it gives them, I guess, the reason not to even make a connection, because they don't check all the boxes. And I think that's a product of what society in general kind of does in regards to, this is what a gay person looks like, or this is what a gay person does and how they act. But we're doing the same thing within our own community. and it's very isolating and harmful.
Right. Do you know, it's interesting. There's a lot. We're here in Utah, and in Utah, Mormonism is the predominant religion. And in the concept of Mormonism, there's privilege given to your worthiness. And to achieve worthiness, you go and you talk to your bishop and you answer a series of questions. You know, do you pay the church a tithing? Do you, adhere to these principles? Blah blah blah, and you get your temple recommend, which says you're worthy, right? But it's about meeting particular qualifiers,
right?
And here in Utah, in particular, maybe not so much outside of Utah, but here in Utah in particular, right? People kind of report each other. I know what happened at John's house last night, Bishop, right? And you can get your worthiness card taken away.
Wow.
And what's interesting is there is such angst between the LGBTQ community and the Mormon community, because many ex-Mormons who are gay feel as if they were excommunicated or disfellowshipped or, basically kicked out of the church because of who they are, right? But what's interesting, and I don't think it's a Mormon phenomenon, but I'm trying to use this metaphor, that I think in many ways we're talking about a gay worthiness litmus test, right? It's like, well, are you pretty enough? Are you big enough? Are you muscular enough? Are you sexy enough? Right? And I think there are a lot of people that I work with who feel as if they're not quite gay worthy.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's no need of trying to be included, or I just assume that I will be excluded because I don't meet the standard. And I think I do think there is like this in crowd that, like, once they're in, I always wonder, do they create enough space to expand the circle, or is it insulated?
That's a really good question. My sense is that it stays pretty insulated and isolated.
Yeah.
Where there isn't much of that expansion, and looking outside of their own circle. And I like to say that, in the work that I do with some of my yoga work, my tantric work, it is about kind of breaking that mold, trying to get people to go beyond that circle of whatever, and see the just really, I teach them about tantric concepts of expanding their consciousness, expanding their vision, breaking these barriers in any form, whatever, however it might show up for you. And it certainly fits in with this. Can you break that barrier of that litmus test of what it is to be a good gay, and just see people as people, right? And here's some ideas, here's some concepts, here's some exercises to maybe help you with that process. Because it does seem like, and it's so systematic in a way, that we've trapped ourselves in this mentality of, check the box, don't fit the different characteristics of what it is to be gay, I guess. And I don't know, it's I don't know if it's specifically unique to Utah, but I really do see it here, having lived in California, but then moving here, I really saw that.
Yeah. It's interesting. So we do a lot of mindfully gay, like sweat lodges and retreats, but most of the ritual ceremony community stuff that Bruce and I host here has a very eclectic group.
Yeah, really.
And it's like if we have a lodge on Saturday, and I probably have 25 to 30 people who are committed to being here. And a lot of them, it will be their first time. But the thing we always hear, thing I conditioned my firekeepers to do, who kind of like my support system, is we make everyone welcome. I will walk someone through and I will introduce them to everyone. And it's like, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Oh, it's John.
Yeah.
John, that's right. And I immediately try to find the thread of connection.
Yes.
And it's probably the one thing I hear people say the most is it was so inviting. And of course, after you sit in a sweat lodge and you get all messy with each other, you come out afterwards, you're like, hey, we're best friends.
Exactly.
But I'm wondering, I'm developing this thought because I was listening to what you were saying. And I thought, what is looking at the crowd that feels like, okay, like here's my circle, right? And the question is, well, how do we expand those circles, or what's our fear in expanding them? But my thought is, why is that difficult? Why has that become a challenge to expand the circle? And maybe a way of looking at that is, what is the mechanism or the benefit of keeping the circle closed?
Ooh.
Like it serves some purpose to look at those trying to get in and say, no, thank you. So what would be the purpose?
The purpose of keeping it closed?
Yeah.
My first reaction and thought about that is that it keeps one safe.
From what?
From outsiders, from
but what is the outsider? We're all outsiders.
The ones that
I'm
are
not yelling at you.
I know you're raising good questions to this, to poke holes at this. The ones that are going to judge and point fingers or turn me in, if I've got my close knit of folks and I keep that tight, then I'm safe. And I'm not going to let anyone else in, because they could be an intruder of some sort. They could be the false gay. I don't know. I'm just making this up.
Because people are trying to get in.
People are trying to get in. But that's mine. And I've got it pretty well protected. That's the first thing that kind of comes to mind. Somehow it's a defense mechanism of sorts. It's a way of kind of putting the shield of protection that maybe it does work in some capacities, but probably in the larger scale, it's not very helpful.
Yeah. So I get into my circle, I get into my clique. We're a tight clique, and we don't think about expanding the circle. We don't think about including others. Others may look into it and think, oh, I wish I could be a part of that. I wish I could be invited into that. But it doesn't feel like the invitation is there. And so we keep our circle closed because we want to keep false gays out.
Yeah. And what else was going to say to that? But keep it closed tight because the people in my circle are like me and they accept me. I don't know about those intruders. I don't know about those other gays. They may not accept me. So it works the other way.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So I'm in my circle. I have my place. I have my role. I'm seen. I'm validated.
Right.
And someone may come into the circle and my role may somehow be compromised. Or you may not like me as well as they do. And how will that impact my standing in this group?
Yes.
So then keeping the circle closed sounds like a very macro approach to like anxiety of not fitting in.
That's what I think.
I hear a similar dynamic with people who stay in toxic relationships.
It's what they know.
Right. Or they break up. This person hurt me. Therefore, I let nobody else in ever because I don't ever want to get hurt again. Which sounds like a really short-sighted way to do humanity.
Yeah.
Right? Because our human experience is a very eclectic, emotional process.
Yeah.
But
on the surface, it sounds, oh, that makes sense. They don't want to get hurt again. But when you kind of expand that and look broader, then you become depressed and isolated, and you don't know how socialization becomes this thing that gets dumped in the garbage.
Right. Then if I want to turn this argument around, I'm thinking of any kind of group or organization. I give you an example. I have two friends who run kind of like the social group. They plan some really amazing events. They go on the tracks to different parts of the state. They go see plays together, movies together. And I talk to a lot of gay men who are just like, and I'll say, hey, you got to look into my friend's group. It has a website. It has resources. And they won't go. And I'll look at the group pictures, and I appreciate the efforts that my friends are putting into this. But they might get a group of 8 to 12 guys. When I'm thinking, there could be 25 to 50 people. Easily. Just my clientele.
Yeah.
Right. And we have seen this with Mindfully Gay. And we're kind of nuanced, right? It's yoga, it's meditation, it's ritual and ceremony, things that modernity has kind of pushed out of a lot of people's consciousness. And we're inviting people to kind of engage in a different layer of consciousness.
Right.
But I know enough people who say, wow, that sounds really appealing. And we get so much feedback about it. And yet there is anxiety about showing up. I imagine there's anxiety for my friends thing about, I can tell you, people that I've tried to coach to go to my friend's group,
right?
A lot of anxiety is what prevents them. Isn't it interesting, in my assessment, the anxiety that keeps people from joining is the same anxiety that keeps the group closed.
Yeah.
We are so neurotic. And which is so interesting.
It is interesting.
Because the contrast that I want to add to this, again, going back to the retreat, is we had some very profound, magical moments that I'm convinced were strictly a byproduct of the power we hold as gay men.
Yes. That's the thing. That's the thing, right?
It's like we're sitting on this nuclear power plant and we're still sticking with 9-volt batteries.
Right. Exactly right. That's it right there. We have to remind ourselves, and this is something that I think the podcast has helped me over this year and a half in doing this, is that, we've been encouraging each other and our audience to, step up and show up, right? And to realize your magic, to realize and know your blessings, to know your uniqueness, to know that power within you. And there's certainly many mechanisms and on ways to bring that magic to the surface. So you know what your magic is, right? But that's that nuclear power plant. That's what we possess. And either we don't know that we have that power, or we've forgotten we have that power, or we don't believe it in some ways. And so, we're just using a 9-volt battery, and that's not giving us the charge that we need to be ever present in this world. But when we can really step into our power, then the question of, am I a good gay, isn't relevant anymore. You are you. And you have a presence. Whether you attract people and you have a little group, but because of that attractiveness, because I work with some people who are starting to realize their own magic, and one of their questions is like, people just come to me, like, well, because you illuminate, you are shining, you have this light. People are drawn to that, and they don't know exactly what they're drawn to, but you have an essence, you have a power, you have a light that you are shining just in your being and just being you. without even trying, right? You're not trying to be anything else or someone else. You're just you, and that's attractive. And I think that's what makes that barrier kind of permeable or non-existent. It's more fluid. The circles, you can kind of move in and out. People can move in and out of your space, and you can move in and out of spaces.
Yeah. Do you remember a while ago, I can't remember if Nick was here or not, but we did this exercise about what does it mean to be a man?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a woman? And the question was posed in such a way as, what is a man supposed to be? What is a man supposed to do? How does a man supposed to show up? And what are the, recognizing that there are like these cultural influences. For instance, men don't cry, right? Men are supposed to be strong, stoic, providers. And we did that with women, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting question to say, gay men are supposed to do what?
Yeah, fill in the blank.
What are they supposed to be? What are they supposed to not do? What are they supposed to do? And when I think about that exercise, I think there's kind of like the muggle existence. Like, what does society expect from us at that level? But what do we expect from each other?
Yeah.
And I think I'm more, I don't know. Do we want to look at both of those or just...
Let's look at that, because when we were posing the question, or, thinking about this topic, that's one of the things that I was thinking about. What's the role of the gay man? What a gay man is supposed to fill in the blank.
In society?
In society, yeah. And what started to come to mind was, again, just that societal thing. If we kind of look at society as big as it is, and as broad as that is, it's a container. And there are certain norms and values that might fit in a particular societal place. Like here, Utah, there's certainly a lifestyle here. It's conservative. It's, we've got the Church of Latter-day Saints as kind of the predominant religion here, et cetera. And those are big influences here, whether we like it or not, or know it or not. That's present here. And I think even within that context, men in general are seen to or are expected to act a certain way. Same respect, I think gay men are also expected to act and behave in a certain way here as well. And because of that, my view is gay men, it seems, in general, kind of conform to the conservatism of this state, and maybe more likely to take on the values and actions and perceptions of kind of the everyday Utah man here, even if they're not Mormon, but they maybe want to be a standout in the community, do well at their jobs, have a monogamous relationship, maybe have children, just these things, these societal things, and they just kind of picked up on that, and that's the way that they're supposed to live or be seen.
It used to be a thing. People would say, yeah, I'm gay, I'm just like you, except for who I like to sleep with. And I think that's the only thing we have in common with straight people. It's what we do sexually. There's only so many things you can do. But I think but what that tells me is somehow we think that normality rests with heteronormative concepts.
Yeah. And so I think there's that influence. And if you don't fit that, and there's certainly a good number of people who don't fit that normality and have stepped into their uniqueness and being themselves and being truly authentic. As a result, because of this societal norm, they're probably ostracized. They're probably, talked about behind closed doors and that kind of thing. Yet they still move forward and they are themselves. And I think that's important. And I think that's to fill in that blank, a gay man, a gay person, fill in the blank, can be themselves. Don't have to live by the heteronormative values. Can show up as they really are. I think there's also some responsibilities. In some cases, and it can come in many forms, and I think there's certainly a spectrum of this as far as activism and being a presence, being a I forget the right word, but just being, like a role model or a mentor for, other people, certainly young people up and coming, that they have a presence in society and they're seen in some way. A representation, I think, is the word I'm looking for. Just representation. And knowing that I could look on TV or look at my school classroom and see my teacher and oh, they're gay. I can be that. Oh, there's a football player. They're gay. They're out. I can be that. It's that representation, I think, that is also one of those fill in the blankers. But those are some of the things that I think are what makes what are the things that a gay person is supposed to do?
What do we think? I guess where I'm kind of going with this a little bit is like, I'm not even sure how to articulate. Maybe it's about stereotypes, right? Like, I think it's interesting how many people look at Bruce and I's relationship. And it's, even though we've been together for 30 years, they only legitimize us since we've been married, which was in 2013.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'm just like, fuck you.
Right?
Because we were together and recognized the value of our relationship long before you all woke up. Right. And it's insulting to me, actually, that people cannot consent. But it's interesting. We're legitimized for when we could legally get married. There's also this interesting that happens where people kind of objectify our relationship. Oh, you're so cute together. I never hear people describe heterosexual marriages in a way that they might look at our relationship and cutesify it or treat it as an abnormality.
Right.
That's kind of interesting.
Wow.
Gay men are supposed to be funny. Right? We're the comic relief. Or we're the girlfriend.
Right.
We're the ones with good advice. We decorate. I do not decorate I can barely fucking dress. Right? But it's interesting. And if you are not a gay that can decorate well
or dress well,
you didn't get the gay gene. Have you heard that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You get the gay gene, or I'm going to take away your gay card.
Yeah. Or my gaydar must not be working.
Yeah.
Because we somehow know who's gay around us. Oh, and I love it. It's like, do you know John Cottrell? Like, okay, there's 50,000 gays in this valley. And if I say I'm gay, it's like, oh, do you know? It's like, well, let me check the Rolodex.
Let me see. Oh, yes.
Here he is. He's got 2 check marks.
Right. Yeah.
Right? We're supposed to be... What else are we supposed to be?
we're supposed to be, well, I think about the arc. We had the episode about the archetypes and stereotypes, right? You know, the great dresser, the jock, or the gym bunny, or whatever they're called now. I don't know.
Studs.
The studs.
We're hypersexual. I remember once.
That's good.
I went to a conference with a friend. My friend was straight. Is straight. And we shared a room together.
Mm-hmm.
And one day at the conference, I got a really bad headache. And I thought, I'm just going to go back to the hotel room and rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I texted my friend, hey, I'm going to go to the hotel room and chill out.
Mm.
And they came back to the room and they knocked and they very carefully opened the door. I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, I didn't want to disturb anything. I said, are you kidding me? I said I had a headache. But there was like this assumption.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That I just don't think is generally shared outside of our expectations with gay men. Superficial. Right? We only like how things look or how we dress or how a person shows up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those, I don't know even what to call those A-lister kinds of attributes. I'm struggling with it because I see that and I have recognized that and I've been wrapped up in it as well. But I think, I don't know, maybe it's because of age. I don't know. I feel like I'm starting to step out of that a little bit, but knowing that, but that still exists.
Yeah. Do you know? Now this is my shortcoming. I'm owning it, right? But what happens when we find someone who doesn't fit? Right, those supposed to be's. I met this guy. I know this guy. Actually, the fairies kind of woke me up to this because a lot of the fairies come from rural parts of where they live, and so they're farmers and they have cows and they milk cows and they live off the land, and it just seems so not gay. That I remember meeting this guy who owned a farm and lived the life of a farmer, and I was just like, wow, nothing about you
screams
gay. Okay, the boots. And the chaps.
Right. I think, I can own that too. There's, you might see someone and talk to them and you find out that they're gay. You're like,
really?
What? You don't look gay.
You weren't acting gay.
You were acting gay. And it's so interesting. It is so interesting. And I think what's helped diffuse it for me a little bit, at least, is because I was certainly wrapped up in that you had to look a certain way and you can tell, and the gaydar and all that kind of stuff. But once I start doing my yoga work and certainly doing tantra work, I was getting people of all types, body types, ages, in and out of the closet, just kind of a full spectrum. And so it helped me to stop judging in that way, where, because people might ask, is everyone gay? In the group, if they're new to the group and they're asking questions about it, is everyone gay? Is everyone good looking? I'm like, well, first off, I don't know if everyone's gay. I don't know if everyone identifies that way. We are doing this particular exercise, and these are the people who are showing up. I don't know. I don't ask. Right? And so I think that's helped me kind of, I don't know what's a good word, unlabel a little bit. And because I don't know. And part of me doesn't care. But it is kind of funny because I know some ranchers, live on a farm, they raise cows and race horses and all of that, which doesn't seem gay, but they're in partnerships and marriages with their husbands, and they live on the ranch, and this is their livelihood, and this is who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's using that same platform we just looked at, and I think there's an intersection here, right? So I'm making an assumption that this is how others looking towards gay men, what they're looking for, right? Limp-wristed, effeminate. I remember, and not so much anymore, but I know when I first came out, the question is, like in our relationship, who's the man, who's the woman? If you're a top, you're a man. If you're a bottom, you're a woman. People are looking to figure out the power structure. There's also this question of, do you want to be a woman? Or do you do drag?
Right, yeah. Do you dress up? Are you a cross-dresser? Yeah.
Right. So those are people kind of looking in.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what we talked about is people looking in. My question is then, looking within gay men, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to be? What are we supposed to do and what are we supposed to not do? How does one belong and how does one not belong? Question I hear all the time. And sometimes I wonder, I'll have clients come in saying, I don't understand why I can't be in a relationship. What am I doing wrong? And what they're really saying is, right, what am I doing wrong sounds like, how am I showing up or not showing up, or what rules am I keeping or not keeping that is keeping me excluded? So how do we answer that question? Go ahead.
Well, I have the answer, Jerry. No, no. I wish I had.
I just came up with it, and I'm struggling.
I certainly don't have the answer, but it is a very interesting question. Because we can certainly make our projections on what the outside looking in, but when we're within, we have this question, we have this struggle.
I love sex. I love sexual energy. I love flirting energy. I'm not always comfortable with it, but I do love that dance. I love to see men that I find attractive. What's interesting is I sometimes feel like that we are often suspicious of each other, that we're looking at each other in that way. Like, stop checking me out. Right? Like there's some kind of opposition to the idea that I, as a gay man, whatever my age or status is, am finding you attractive. And that, so there's some rule there, right? Because often I can get if someone's like, being too aggressive. But to notice someone, to see someone, to acknowledge someone seems to always kind of carry the caveat of, oh, well, there's only one thing you want from me. Well, I get to get 2 or 3, but right. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, because I see it within, but that's also an outside looking in view. We're sexualized, we're objectified by, non-gay people. They see us as these sexual, hypersexual beings, and that's all we think about. So that's all they're thinking about. That, well, he's probably trying to have sex with that other guy, or he's trying to have sex with me. That's what the outside does. But we're doing the same thing.
Right.
So I don't know if it's, who's mirroring who. I don't know. There's a question there too. We're reinforcing that stereotype, I guess.
Yeah.
By doing within our own community.
But help me out. Let's say I work out at the gym at the same time you do, and I believe this. I think you are a very handsome, sexy guy. I just see that in you. I've always seen that in you. And if I were to see that, or dare I compliment, right? Dude, you're looking good, right? How does that become offensive? How does that become problematic? I would love for anyone to come up and say, like, and I've had I've had moments where people, and I always walk away thinking that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like there is a lot of people that when that exchange happens,
Mm-hmm.
it turns cold, even if it's not even verbalized, just if it's kind of acknowledged with a look or a wink or something. I could be wrong. I'm asking legitimately, is there something about that exchange that is problematic? If I looked at you and went like, if I looked at you disapprovingly,
Mm-hmm. How would I respond?
yeah.
I think I would respond with, I probably just turn away.
Yeah.
With
But if I look at you like, I'm still in the boat.
I would probably do a little re-acknowledgement and then move on. I think that's my realistic approach.
Did you say run on or move on? No.
move on. Because I think there's a word that I've used. We were talking about it before we start recording, and it's and I heard someone else use this phrase. And it's gay panic, and I think I have gone into gay panic, and my gay panic is when usually happens at the gym, and I see guys that I might even consider good looking or attractive, and I don't want to get caught looking at them because I don't know what their story is, and maybe getting chastised or hurt or some reprimand or something like that because I don't want that. So I avoid that. So that's my gay panic. Like my looking at them is somehow is a come on to them. Like I looked a little too long is perhaps a come on.
Where I get perplexed, I'm thinking, why don't I hear that as a compliment?
Exactly.
Like, right. Wow, this guy likes what he sees, and like, thank you. Thank you. I'm in a relationship. Thank you. I'm not interested.
Right.
Thank you.
Period.
I'd love to have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But let's get to know, there could be so many, but why can't the idea, I think that's, do you know where that gay panic thing kind of became, do you know the history of that?
No, I don't actually.
Oh, Matthew Shepard.
Oh.
When Matthew Shepard, the defense of the guys who so Matthew Shepard was this kid, I think it was in Wyoming, where he was at a bar and these guys took him out in the field, beat the crap out of him, ultimately killing him, strung him up on a fence.
Right.
And the defense that they used was the gay panic defense.
Oh.
He was coming onto us and we were afraid that he was wanting to be sexual with us.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Well, now that makes sense to me. Because I see that, I see that in the kind of in the Black community too. That's a whole different story. But why can't we just take that as a compliment? I find myself, I've got to really kind of, I don't know why is it so hard? I've got to like hunker down and be so good with myself and confident with myself in that moment if I get some kind of compliment. And I have, in the gym or elsewhere, where I can just say, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Because I'll get compliments like that. And don't see it as a come on.
Yeah.
It was just a genuine, compliment. Oh, you're looking good.
Yeah. Well, I do think the notion of panic is relevant here. And I would even argue this could be part of historical trauma.
Yeah.
Because I was reading a text from a friend who talked about his preference was to be a gay man, but to have non-gay men as friends. And you and I both commented, wow, I know growing up and as a young gay person, you couldn't trust straight men to be your friends because the only reason you would be friends was because of sexual motivations.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be threatening to your safety.
Mm.
And here we are in 2025, and gay men are like, I'd rather be friends with straight men. And I know a lot of gay men who have straight friends.
Yeah.
And they are loved and they are supported. And it's this beautiful evolution that I see happening that wasn't present in the 70s and 80s. And I know I have a few straight men that I genuinely and thoroughly love. One in Colorado. Right. And I recognize there is a hesitation within myself to, can I trust that relationship?
Yeah.
Right. Not the one in Colorado, but the relationship with another straight man.
Yeah.
But I also think I have enough consciousness to kind of work through that's history and we're today. But this panic thing, I think it's very interesting.
It is.
I wonder if the other piece of it too, and I'm just thinking out loud, and I could be full of shit here, but I think as gay men, as visible as we are, I think in many ways we try to nuance the aspects of our life in such a way that invisibility may sometimes feel more comforting. Because I know, and again, maybe this is just my historical context, but when I get complimented or acknowledged, there's a part of me that feels seen in a profound way that has not always been accessible. And it can be a little unnerving to be seen. And I'm a very public person, but there's something about hearing the compliment or receiving the compliment and feeling like I'm not in control of the narrative.
I get that. I understand.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Because I get that, and I find myself questioning.
Yeah.
What's the motivation here? And I have to, and I wish I didn't have to do that. I begin to question, well, why the compliment? And why are they being nice to me? And all this stuff, where I feel like my safety is in danger, probably for no reason. But that's where I go sometimes, whether it's gay or straight.
Yeah. And so is that the part that creates the challenge in us showing up for each other? Like, we're so hyper vigilant about our own narratives and our own sense of safety that we insulate, we isolate.
Yeah.
And it's funny as we're talking, especially what you were just saying, I'm getting a little emotional.
Yeah, I can feel some tingles happening here and even some discomfort.
Yeah.
Like I'm finding myself struggling with parts of this. Yeah. I was like, this is interesting. This is very interesting what's kind of showing up for me in this moment. But something just popped into my head. This is starting to remind me of kind of the coming out process, where it's such a profound thing to do. And even and I'm thinking of the steps towards maybe publicly coming out if someone chooses to do that. What are some of those baby steps? And I know for me, and I think for others, it was, surround yourself by people who love you no matter what, who don't judge you, who accept you for who you are. If you came out to them, they would embrace you. If you know and sense who that is and who those folks are, surround yourself with those people. Because I think that becomes an empowering force when you feel held and seen and heard in that way. I think that you develop, you really develop your own powers, really, and that aptitude to then step out into that scary world out there, and be yourself, and not be too triggered and affected by gay panic, as an example. Because I'm thinking again of the sweat lodge. That's a beautiful container that you've created. it is welcoming, it is inviting, and that's what people are saying about it.
Yeah.
You get all sorts of folks. So when people step into this magical uh, circle here, they feel welcomed.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of that empowerment they really gain from the entire experience.
Right.
You know, they were welcomed into the home. Oh, let me introduce you to these other guys. The other guys are also very welcoming and embracing. Then we have this profound experience together. So going through something that's kind of hard and scary at the all together, that's all uh, uh, reinforcement of I'm an okay person.
Yeah.
I can do things. I can go out there.
I think where all this is going, I almost feel like there's another podcast attached to this. Like
I'm
we simply
it.
talked about hypersexual and checking each other out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's so many more,
yeah.
Right? Like, gay men are supposed to be humorous, right? like we're supposed to be the comedic relief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're the best friend. We're the girlfriend. We're the best friend. We're the sidekick. We're the mediators.
Yeah. But I think, because I know we're kind of running out of time, but I think maybe the takeaway from this, and I recognize this kind of came up in the retreat over the weekend, right? Is as we start to unravel some of the core issues or the core stories that we carry about ourselves, it does raise more questions. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years and I kind of had a couple of revelations.
Yeah,
today,
like, oh.
Right? And people are like, what's the sense? What's the sense? And here's what I would say. The willingness to develop that sense of consciousness and awareness may be a challenge, may provoke emotion, may take you to places unexpected. Yeah. But I ultimately find liberation at the end of that process. Yeah. I feel like somebody has loosened the psychic corset. And I can breathe more comfortably in my own skin.
Yes.
And I was having this conversation with someone who was talking about showing up with this sense of confidence about themselves. And I find that I can go into most circles now with a sense of solid consciousness and awareness that allows me to listen more, to participate more authentically, to advocate, whatever role I need to step into.
Right.
But it requires a discipline around doing this work. That's why I think the podcast is important. The retreats are important, is it gives us an opportunity to liberate the medicine that's a part of who we are. Absolutely.
And that's a tantric message as well, that liberation. Tantra, 2 words put together. It's the evoking of consciousness or opening or expanding consciousness to liberate the spirit, to liberate energy. So it's that liberation. It's freeing. It's freeing.
What is it?
Freeing. It's freeing.
Okay, I thought you said freeing.
Freeing.
Well, again, I wish we had a group of men in here.
Oh, yes.
In the absence of that, we have places where you can leave comments and participate in the conversation that's happened here. And so please go to our website, mindfullygay.com. There's places to email us there. We're Instagram, mindfully_gay. We're on Facebook as Mindfully Gay.
Yep.
We have a carrier pigeon whose name is Mindfully Gay. But we would love to hear from you and certainly hope that these conversations are provocative and enlightening for you as they are for us.
Wonderful. And with that, we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. How would you answer the question, what is a good gay?
Come share your story with us on Instagram at mindfully_gay. And check out mindfullygay.com for upcoming community events. We've got some free ones on the way.
And don't forget, John, that our fall retreat is coming up in September. You can register for the event at mindfullygay.com. If this conversation moved you, helped you reflect, or made you think, please rate and review the episode. It helps more listeners find us.
Until next time, be kind, be curious, and be yourself.